You're listening to the Warriorside podcast, transformational storytelling from veterans and first responders. Tales of triumph, loss, and perseverance.
Welcome to the Warriorside podcast. The stories you hear from our veterans and first responders are reflections of their individual paths that are certain to be different from yours. What worked for their healing and awareness may not work for you. Alternative approaches to health, such as plant medicines and non-ordinary states of consciousness coaching, are frequently discussed throughout these episodes. This is simply a byproduct of the experience of many of our storytellers and is in no way an endorsement of these tools that are clearly not for everyone. In every case, these experiences were executed with mindful preparation, professional facilitation, and supportive integration coaching. We do not recommend or endorse any specific substance or protocol to anyone. I am a coach, not a licensed therapist, psychologist, or medical professional. The conversations here reflect my own learning process and the unique connection I share with each guest. What you witness is an expression of that specific moment and is not intended as medical or psychological advice. Everyone is on their own path. Your path is your own. Take these conversations in curiosity and with the explorer's spirit. Take what serves you, leave what doesn't. Finally, if you are struggling with thoughts of suicide or are in crisis, don't wait. Call or text 988 or call 911 immediately. There is a way through the dark, but you have to reach out and connect. And so it is. Connection is the medicine. And this is the Warriorside podcast. Let's talk over fire.
There are moments when life splits in two, before and after. For me, one of those moments was in the doctor's office, hearing the word cancer. I had ignored the signals, ignored a test that indicated something serious, until my wife screamed at me, "You can die." Honestly, I was more afraid of her than I was of cancer. I still am. But then the fight was on. Aggressive cancer, brutal treatment, surgery, radiation, chemotherapy, hormone therapy. I survived. But in that survival, I had a new perspective. Looking back on the signals I'd missed, not only in my body, but in the cancer and my teammates that died fighting cancer. And looking forward in the patterns that we continue to ignore. When I finished my personal battle with cancer, knock on wood, I never would have imagined that cancer would be my next mission. There are moments in history when it splits in two, before and after. September 11th, 2001 was one of those days. For those of us old enough to remember, we will never forget. The planes crashing into the towers, smoke pouring from the jagged holes in the skyline, people desperate, terrified, jumping rather than burn. The Twin Towers, symbols of American strength, crashing in fire and steel. We were helpless. We felt rage. We felt a call to action. And a generation of warriors fought in a 20-year war. That's 7,294 days of war. And there was another fight coming, one that we couldn't yet imagine. Years later, the 9/11 Commission talked about what went wrong. The largest failure was one of imagination. We believe leaders did not understand the gravity of the threat. The system was blinking red. Officials failed to connect the dots. Flight school students learning to fly that didn't care how to land. Intelligence agencies siloed, unable to share information. Intelligence chatter, something big was coming. Our failure of imagination blinded us to what was happening, and we couldn't imagine the scale of the threat until it crashed into us. Imagine now a future headline. A silent slaughter. U.S. warfighters dying at home. That may be a future headline, but that's happening now. In our war since 9/11, more than 525,000 active duty service members have been diagnosed with cancer. Not old men, not retirees, young men and women in their prime. Among them, Green Berets, Rangers, Night Stalkers, SEALs. So many diagnosed with late-stage cancer in their 20s and 30s. I am one of those 525,000. My cancer didn't come from family history. It came from 20 years of war. 3 years of deployments. Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen, Kenya, Bosnia. Decades of disrupted sleep, stress, inflammation. Thousands of rounds fired in unventilated indoor ranges, and breaching charges sucking up that explosive residue. We didn't know that cancer would be the cost of our service until it was. And then there's the piece about special operations. It's not just about us. We are breaching the door for all veterans to follow through with better cancer care. Pilots, submariners, aircraft maintainers, fuel handlers, all these people served in silence, and now they fight cancer alone. We can do better. We will do better. At Soteria, we don't ignore the signals. We don't lack imagination. We act now. We don't wait for stage 4. We guide and coordinate hunter-killer teams that find cancer, that fight it, that kill it before it kills our service members. There's a failure of imagination that we cannot allow to happen. Winston Churchill said that America will always do the right thing after it tries every other option. But we must act now to identify cancer early. And the good news is that we are not helpless. We're on the edge, on the verge of a cancer treatment revolution. Genomics that identifies cancer's weakness. AI that connects biology to treatment, navigation that cuts through red tape, community that won't let teammates fight alone, and research that fast tracks answers. I'm so excited about what we're doing at Soteria to make a difference. Sebastian Junger, in the book Tribe, recalls the earliest definition of community: those you would feed and defend. Will you join us, stand with us, fight for them the way they fought for you? You don't need to go to SEAL training, just maybe Venmo. Do one thing, donate. Two things, and get others to donate. Because money fuels the fight, imagination builds the future. Please join our tribe.
Welcome back to Warriorside. Noah Galloway and I are here with our amazing friend and Warriorside alum, Rob Newson. For y'all don't know, Warriorside is a conscious approach to storytelling where we help veterans and first responders reconnect more deeply through the power of their story with the self. And then when they get up on stage and they tell these stories, we also help them reconnect with community. And why? Well, the reason why is most of us are aware of these numbers. 22 to 41 of us die every day. Us first responders and veterans die every day from suicide. And those deaths are occurring in places that many, I don't think, are aware. And those places are a place of disconnection. They're disconnected from the self. They're disconnected from who they are, who they really are, and disconnected from community. And Warriorside is a direct affront against that. And our attempt at helping our precious population for reconnecting to the self and reconnecting through community, through just the amazingness of these life paths that they've experienced. So very, 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 very grateful that everyone who is here today. And I want to say hi to everybody. What's up? How you guys doing?
Good. I'm happy to see you guys. Rob, hope you're doing well.
Great to be with you guys. It's been a while.
Noah, where are you at right now?
I'm in Bali, Indonesia.
What are you doing there, dude? I know what you're doing.
Yeah, I know you do. So my wife is hosting a yoga retreat. She's hosted numerous retreats here, and this is her first time back post-COVID doing her retreat, and she is over the moon right now. Just so happy to be here. In a couple of days, the retreat starts, and I'm just a participant, and I'm looking forward to it because it's a big part of my mental health that I'm going through, and this is just an added component that I'm just going to take full advantage of, and very grateful. And Rob said it off camera. I'm very lucky to have the woman I have in my life. She is way above my league in every sense of the word. And it forces me to want to be a better man. That sounds corny, but that is what she's doing. I'm very appreciative of it. That's where I'm at.
Amazing. Okay, well, allow me to introduce you all to our guest and alum, Rob Newson. His last name ends with an N, like November. He's a 30-year SEAL retired, spent most of his time as SEAL teammate. Currently, he is working as Chief Community Officer of Soteria Precision Medicine Foundation, and he'll talk more about that later. And it has a lot to do with the story that you all, this powerful story that you all just heard. And man, so let's get into it. Rob, what's going on, brother?
It's great to be with you guys. It's been quite the journey since Warriorside, both from internal introspection and becoming a better practitioner of storytelling through what you guys have laid out. It's fantastic.
Hmm.
If I, I'll
Go
tell you
ahead,
what,
Noah, go for it.
Rob, I told you this the first time I met you, and watching you give your speech confirmed it. You're a leader in everything you do. Just your presence in the room, you have this demeanor that people listen to you. And that speech you gave, I'll be honest, that's a tough location. That's a hard place to give a speech. I mean, it is what it is. You know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with it. It's where it was. Those people got to hear it. But being outside and having wind chimes and all these things going on, but you did an amazing job because of your presence. You have that natural ability, and it's incredible to watch.
I appreciate that, Noah. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I wonder if you could share a little bit more about your opening comments about, your experience of Warriorside and it changing perspective and in relationship to the self and things. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. Well, so I think there's two aspects of that. One is kind of the nuts and bolts of storytelling, which include all the preparation and internalization, right? I could always give a good talk, but most times it was kind of reading from a script, or it was hit or miss. Sometimes I would crush it, and other times I'd come back and do the same thing. It wasn't so great. And it was because it wasn't internalized, and it wasn't, I didn't put in the work. And so Warriorside taught me how to put in the work, to internalize it, to shape it, to start with a crash and have twists and turns, make it a real story like you're on a ride. But the other part that I wasn't expecting is Warriorside really focuses on individual transformations, right? What is important in this story to you, and how did it change you? And as we work through my story over the Warriorside weekend that we spent, it went places I didn't expect it to go. And you guys were so great in gently pushing, hey, I think something's there. I think you need to explore this. What about that? And my first reaction was like, no, I don't want to go there. But you could tell that that's where the story wanted to go. And so you followed it, and you're like, oh, wow, I didn't even know that about what was going on. And maybe in the back of my head, or it wanted to come out, but it's lessons that you kind of peel away when you're digging into the story.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. They could only be ready to come out. Otherwise, when I'm, as as Noah knows, as maybe people when I'm listening to you, there is a hearing aspect there's a listening aspect that's happening. And also, if you allow me in, which you did, like there's an energetic connection that's going on. And I can feel, well, I don't know what it is. You know what I mean? It's like I didn't have any answers or anything like that, but there's like, like let's back up to that doctor real quick and let's back up here. And it's only because there was part of you that was the you that is really, really you, we're ready. Yeah, at least to hear this. And not from me, because I could never know, is we're ready to hear this from the self. I'm wondering, do you remember specific times in your story, in the initial version in which you arrived, where there were like forks in the road, and you connected through the process of the training? You're like, oh wait, I got to go back here, and there's something else there. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. Well, there were several pieces. One, I think, we like to tell, or we're used to telling stories of this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and that's not an interesting story. And when you start shifting kind of the chronology to match, I guess, the emotional build, it opens you up to different insight. And so, yeah, the story about the doctor, I've told that a lot. I've thought about that a lot. What caring practitioner would do that, right? What in the world? That's the way you do that, and just how it's easy to build someone up into the villain, and the big twist for me was halfway through the story, and I'm thinking about other people instead of myself and what's happening to me. I'm like, oh wow, I've done those very bad things to other people where I didn't see them. I wasn't there for them. And to me, that was the biggest twist, that I came in wanting to tell a story about cancer and about that feeling that every cancer patient has of being alone and vulnerable. That's that naked piece. You're just so vulnerable. I didn't expect the story to turn to, oh, other people are vulnerable and at a weak point, and I'm not noticing that. I don't stop to see them. And so to me, that was the biggest, both revelation and gut punch of, oh, this villain is not just someone out there, it's someone in here.
That was, I love that you brought that up because I'd written that down. That was like the entire story is good. I mean, it goes all different directions and you're good storyteller. But when you brought it back and then you made me as the listener, because as the listener, I'm mad at the doctor.
Yeah.
But then when you brought it back, I connected with it. It relates it to everyone. And it's so impactful because didn't see that coming. And it hits so hard in the chest where it's like, oh my God. And it makes it so good because it's real. And you went somewhere that most of us wouldn't even realize. We would have just been mad at that doctor, and you bringing it around connected those dots in a way that made it very impactful.
And to me, that's the power of Warriorside, right? I don't think I get there if I'm just working on this speech by myself. It takes some coaches who are not only listening to the story and wanting to make it better, but they're seeing you and they're listening to you, and maybe what parts sound guarded, right? Like, hey, why are you covering that up? That's what you need to open up about.
It's never why are you covering that up, for sure. It's it's just, oh, that is being covered up. It's such a tremendous. If you've ever jumped out of an airplane, I know you guys have, but if you've ever jumped out of an airplane, it's like that first jump, the first time you've ever jumped out of an airplane, it's like the equivalent of looking at the self. Whenever suffering is being experienced in life, whether it's through an interaction with another human being or an interaction with nature or something like that, like coming to understand that literally everything starts with the self. It's just the way. It is the way. How we process and how we navigate, how we move through, how we experience it, everything in our awareness is all here. It's all in here. And what that means is, if there's something wrong out there, it can only start from within. And I had this really powerful revelation. I don't want to talk too much about this for time's sake, but I had a little rough go of it growing up and getting beat up by people who, you would hope wouldn't be part of the ones who are beating you up all the time. And so I was angry about that my whole life for 40 plus years. And then I went on this meditation walk and I realized in a moment that had I had a younger brother, I would have destroyed that kid. It just, shit just goes downhill. And I just so happened that I didn't have anybody that I was capable of beating up at the time. So it just all ended with me. And so I felt like I was like the victim my whole life. And the moment that I realized that had circumstances been slightly different, I would have been doing the same thing. And then instantly there was so much movement and forgiveness and progress and growth and expansion that happened from that one thing. It was like, it wasn't him against me. It was just the way of things. And I didn't understand myself in that way. And so, yeah, so much. So yeah, hearing that about the doctor, and by the way, you mentioned it as a villain. Maybe, I mean, that's fair enough, but I think we have all of these parts and components within us that are allowed to exist that we may label as villains. Fair enough, but it's just energy that needs to be moved. You wanted to be treated differently in that very, very like poignant, significant moment of your life, and you just weren't. Yeah. And when you had your own experiences of showing up somehow in those ways, not meaning to, but doing that, I mean, you weren't a villain then either. You're just, and your friend, he's like, what are you, Michael Phelps or something? Like, he probably just didn't know how to feel pain for you, with you, with you.
I thought about that.
Yeah. Anyway, I'll talk for a long time. Speaking a little bit about, you mentioned forgiveness, like you would never be able to. I'm curious what forgiveness means to you.
Yeah. When I thought about never forgiving that doctor for the breach of care and trust, right? It's forgiveness is not saying it's okay. It's not right, but I think accepting that, one, maybe that was the worst patient interaction he's ever had, and maybe he's a great doctor, right? And just something was going on that day. But I think, to me, forgiveness is about not making that one action or what happened, that event, be the entire focal point of a person's life. I remember, people talk about having your worst moment be the definition of who you are and what you have done. And that's what we do as a society, right? And so forgiveness is, to me, about saying, hey, that was one event. And like you said, it's energy that needs to be released. Don't hold on to that one event. Accept it and take the good that comes out of it.
Aside from that, from the story, as we're talking about that, the doctor, you know how you ever you ever seen a comedian do a set and have someone heckle him, and it makes you, or you feel it, the awkwardness as a speaker, when you didn't make the doctor look bad. You shared a story. You did a very well, like you allowed us to decide how we felt about the doctor without you attacking him.
Yeah.
Because if, say, you would have just attacked him and left it, that would have sat in people and they would have thought, well, I didn't enjoy that. You bring it back around, made it comforting, and that realization that you weren't attacking him, that you start to think, oh my God, he sees patients all day. Complacency is something that we've dealt with in combat situations. It happens. So the way you told it was so well when you first brought him up, and the way you brought it back around, it makes me think of, there's a saying, you never throw dirt because you'll lose ground. And I say that to point out that the vibe you gave of that was so perfectly done. Like, I hate that I'm sorry that I just keep harping on that, but that was the best part of your speech, was how you described him. You allowed us to have an opinion, and then you explained it. And it made perfect sense. And you made it about your story and your experiences and what you learned from it. And as a listener, I felt it. I really felt it. So I had to say that again. That is such a powerful part of that story.
Thank you. Yeah.
I think a lot about the whole idea of forgiveness a lot, all the time. So many people have as part of their healing process, forgiving themselves or forgiving other people. And one of the things that I come across frequently, at least in my understanding of forgiveness, as we were saying before, like everything in life is all processed. It all begins here. When I connected with the idea that forgiveness is totally and entirely and collectively experienced within the self, it became very clear that it has nothing to do with what other people do or don't do, or what other people did or didn't do. To me, forgiveness is being able to sit in the experience of what happened and holding no anger and holding no idea of retribution, no idea of vengeance, no idea of even judgment. I'm talking about the highest levels of forgiveness. But in the end, it doesn't change. It doesn't bank on the fact that they're never going to do it again. It doesn't bank on the fact that they're going to change as human beings, and so as long as they change, I can forgive. It's not dependent on anything other than your state of being. And the only way that I'm aware of that can actually come to existence is by allowing everything to be as it is without judgment. And with the judgment part, Noah was, talking about you just get in this, patients aren't the only ones who suffer because of our current healthcare system. Yeah. Like, there's no way people go to medical school. Well, I'm guessing there's no way they go to medical school so that they can turn people into cattle and just like, you get 10 minutes, you get 10 minutes, you get 10 minutes. But that's the world that they find themselves in. And so my guess is that doctor was also suffering, and that he never got a chance to really be in that room with you the way he wanted. And now, well, both of you have probably seen, I've seen the Army do IED sweeps where these guys are walking up and down streets and they're kicking boxes in case it's an IED. And if it blows up, well, then so be it. But that's their 18th hour of being awake. They've been on deployment for, 22 months already. They're just over it. It's just, I just wonder how the doctors must feel being forced to be in this thing of like, you're not allowed to be a doctor. You're something entirely different. By the way, go tell this guy he's about to die. It's just like,
tremendous insight. And in earlier iterations of the story, I talked about how I waited for 45 minutes past my appointment time, how my wife was going to call in. She's an ER doc. She wanted to hear firsthand, and she had to start a shift. So, as you say that, I'm thinking, oh yeah, this guy's probably stacked up. I wasn't his last guy. He's running almost an hour late, and he's got a lot more people to deliver bad news to. So, you don't consider what's going on in other people's lives. And that's part of the story is, hey, it's about being present for others as much as about others being present for you.
Yeah. Mm. You said something really cool. There's a difference between real fear and, I'm paraphrasing here, and buzzer fear. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah. Well, so the Basra moment was less than minutes, right? It just happened so fast, but you get that. I got that image that stuck with me, but that was so fleeting and made up in my mind. Yeah, the threat was there, but it wasn't of substantial, true, it didn't land on me. So that's very different, both in the duration and in the depth, I suppose, of the fight, right? And so if you put Basra on one side of the scale, and then you put, man, I almost died several times in the middle of the scale, and then on the far right of the scale would be, this sucks. Like you said, the guys kicking boxes. This sucks so bad. I'm so tired of fighting for my life. This is wearing me out and stealing who I am. And that, that's just the depth of fear, vulnerability, weakness that my wife was warning about. Look, you have to remember who you are. At every turn, don't forget who you are, because the longer the battle goes and the weaker you get, the easier it is to think of yourself as the fight, as the cancer, as the weakness, instead of no, I'm still in here, and this fight isn't me. I'm separate and I'm different.
Man, what you're talking about is so the core. It's stealing who you are. And I think one of the fundamental components of all human suffering in the mind, besides resistance, is though, for example, I should not have cancer right now. Like, I got a lot of things to do that I'm supposed to, resistance in that way. But I think most people, if not everyone who suffers, and I'm not talking about experiencing pain, I'm talking about suffering, they have no idea who they really are. They don't know who they think they know. They think, ego, job, quality, traits, personality stuff, all that stuff. They think that's who they are. And when someone comes to actually know who they are, there can be no suffering in the cancer taking that away, because it's literally not possible. And I think that that's such a huge thing that, man, if I could snap my fingers and all of a sudden the world knows something, just the one thing I would want them to know is like, oh, this is who I am. Because that is it changed. It's not even a game. It's like it's a dimension shifter. And anyway, sorry, no, I didn't mean to cut you up. I got excited, bro.
No, I was going to point out, you talk about that when you said, well, one, when you tell the story, and, as a combat veteran, like I relate to when you say, when things pop off, I always tell people, you don't know the fear until afterwards and you look back on it. But this isn't like that. This is not something you were recruited into. You didn't choose it. It happened, and then you're living with it. And you make a comment where you said, you don't know if you're getting old, and it's aches and pains, and it's cancer whispering, I might be back. Like that. Wow. Because that's the reality that, you face. And what Diego said was, then you are faced and forced and hopefully find out who you really are in order to overcome that ongoing fear that can take over your life.
Yeah. I live in the cancer world now. I do stuff to try to support cancer in the military and special operations. And a buddy of mine who has a very rare ocular cancer called me up, and he just said, the first thing he said is, Rob, how do you deal with it? And I knew exactly what he was talking about. And, that whisper in the back of your head that talks about all the horrible things that are coming, including death, I call it the boogeyman. And I related to him that, for me, you have to make friends with the boogeyman, right? It can't be something scary. It has to be something that is like, that that thought may be true. Maybe this is cancer, but I'm not going to live in fear of it. I'm gonna, when something is weird, I go to the doctor and I say, hey, this is weird. What's going on? And okay, I had a soft tissue knuckle injury, not a big deal. At least we know there's not cancer growing in that from excessive radiation, right? So that's to me how you deal with the tormentor is you parse it into, yes, that can be true. It can be a lie, but I'm not going to live in fear of the worst thing that can happen to me.
I was going to ask that question at the end. How did you make peace with the boogeyman? And I believe you just answered that for yourself. Is that the answer that you would give had I asked you the question directly?
Yeah, that's absolutely the answer. How I got there is a journey, right? And so I got cancer in 2017. My wife had breast cancer 2018. So we're both bang bang in the family, and she's a veteran as well. And so, the boogeyman moved in and made permanent residence with us. And there's a great veterans nonprofit that focuses on mental health and transitioning out called Heroes and Horses. And they take you to Montana. Micah Fink, great former SEAL, runs it. But it's for all military. They take you to Montana. You spend 40 days learning kind of how to ride a horse, how to pack a mule, how to go into the backcountry and live for first a week and then 17 days. And the whole reason I went, right, guys are dealing with PTSD and survivor's guilt, suicidal ideation, and I'm there thinking about how I deal with the whisperer. And so it was a long, long trek on horseback, cutting trail, sleeping under the stars, thinking constantly about how do I deal with this and how do you make friends with kind of a negative Nelly that's on your shoulder. And so it took a lot of contemplation and a lot of exertion, both physical and mental, to come to that place.
Are you cool if I talk about something that may open the door to maybe more to the path? Is that cool?
Yeah. Not? Bring it
on. The idea of not letting this get to you, or is resistance. In the end, there's still resistance. And in our culture, resistance is strong. You know what I mean? If you're strong enough to, and I think that is such a huge contributor to why there is so much suffering in our culture, because resistance, or the opposite of vulnerability, is looked on as a strength. When there's real, not real, because it's all real, but when there's transcendent vulnerability of just letting go, of accepting all there is. Also in our culture, we look at that as weakness, like surrendering or something like that, as if it's a weakness. But when there is letting go and acceptance that the boogeyman exists, and that he's alive and he's saying all the things, he's whispering all the things, but it's acceptance in the knowing, going back to what we were talking about, knowing who you are. When one knows who they are, what that means is they know how powerful they are. Truly, to the core of their being, that they know that no matter how strong the boogeyman is, no matter how strong and powerful and hateful and dark or whatever the whispering is, that they are stronger still. That they are presence or source or whatever it is you want to say itself. In that moment of awareness, because the whisperer or the boogeyman isn't the boogeyman for the sake of being a boogeyman. Like, there's nothing within us that's out to attack us if we understand what it is. It's a teacher, but it doesn't teach you by giving you the answers. It doesn't teach you by saying, hey man, you're strong, you know that, right? Like, you're loved, you know that, right? It's like, no, it's like, somebody fucking hates this person, and like relentless, so that should one choose to face and sit and be in all of that maelstrom of wickedness, some would say, in the process of that, they come to know who they are. That's how the teaching happens. And that can only happen by fully allowing the whispering, by fully allowing the boogeyman to fully be as they are. And in the process of learning, then the whispering lightens and softens, and the boogeyman it's just a different, it's like the doctor. The doctor is no longer this enemy. There's humanity behind it. It's like, oh shoot, I get this. And the boogeyman itself, when it's the title, the name tag is changed from boogeyman to teacher, everything changes. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be not let. It is there as a teacher. And so accepting the boogeyman as it is the path towards real. I mean, you can see people who are on different paths and they're in different states of their process of dying. There are some who are just, everything is not okay. And there are some who are closer to dying. Like, everything is perfect. Yeah. Everything just is as it is. And that's, I think, where a lot of that comes from. And that's why the things that we're talking about are not found in normal states of awareness about our cultural understandings or figuring things out or thinking. This is why elevated states of consciousness are so critical to our development and transcendence through trauma. And it doesn't have to be psychedelics. I mean, meditation is just giant. Near-death experiences are giant, where you're like, oh, wait a minute. Jeremy Renner, that guy who almost died a couple of years ago in Lake Tahoe, he was plowing snow for somebody and the snowplow ran over him. And, he died. And he came back and he's like, oh, crap, there's nothing. I don't have to worry about this stuff anymore. Like, this is all a game. Anyway, I mentioned that just because some of the people listening to our program are listening for maybe things that are helpful for them as they're facing their own boogeyman. So I appreciate you letting me take some time there.
No, that was fantastic. You did a great job of unpacking, just that one phrase that now seems very ineloquent, make friends with the boogeyman. It's really, it's like you said, transforming this fearful tormentor boogeyman into, or actually seeing them for what it is. And it's a teacher, it's a Sherpa, it's someone that helps you analyze what is going on inside of yourself. It kind of reminded me, one of the great drills that you had at Warriorside as prep is to come up with 5 anecdotes, right? Anecdotes are they're a vignette, not a long story, but what I found when I did those were there's pieces and parts that's a part of the deeper story, right? And one of those stories was about will versus identity. And so after I got through all of the cancer treatments, physically I was a wreck. mentally, emotionally, I was worn out. And so the first thing I did is go see a massage therapist, a Rolfer, and he hooked me up with a trainer. And he said, look, this trainer had this horrible hip accident. He came back from being, just devastated into full capacity. And so I think he'd be good for you. And so I go to this trainer, and we're together for several months, and he puts his hand on the small of my back, and he said, Rob, this is the locus of your will. This is where you live, right? Your will pushes you through life. That's how you got through SEAL training. That's how you got through wars. Will is so powerful. He said, but it's exhausting. You can't live your life living with only willpower. And then he puts his hand in the center of my body, between my chest and my stomach, and he says, this is your identity. When you become clear on your identity, it pulls you forward. It doesn't push you forward. And so, as you're describing this piece about the boogeyman and the tormentor and the whisperer, the one way to look at it is I can fight it, I can resist it with my willpower, or I can see it as a teacher and a Sherpa that is trying to get me to move from willpower to identity, and not resist, but get pulled forward into who you are and what you're about.
Ken, if I could do a little commercial real quick for Warriorside, to 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 anyone that is listening right now, this is normal conversation at Warriorside. And as you were sharing, Diego, I even glanced over at my cell phone screen, and I was leaned in like a little child, taking it all in. Like I'm learning from both you, Rob, and you, Diego, from your story, from your outlook, Diego. And when we're at Warriorside, I experienced that between you and John, who trains speakers, Diego, who is just who you are. I don't even know how to describe you, man. Like you're just incredible. But this is what Warrior Sight is. It's not just, hey, we're going to show you, you're not going to just learn how to stand on stage and not crap your pants. This is learning to tell a story and find out who you are and learn from people like you, Diego. And I love that you are who you are, because there is so much that comes out of this every moment. I love hearing you speak. And then the comparison, or what comes out of it, is like your story, Rob, that even though I've never experienced cancer, your story is so relatable because of the way you tell it and what you share, because all of that is real and it's so impactful. And I catch myself saying that word so much, impactful, but that's what your speech is. And to anyone listening, this is what Warrior Side is. It is more than just telling a story. It's living life.
Yeah. And I will add community, right? You're with other men and women who are on parallel, intersecting, fascinating journeys. And you're like, wow, that's an amazing story too. I love that.
Yeah. And for the listener, all due respect to the dude, I mean, connecting to the idea of identity is still ego. That's what I mean. It's like, we don't know who we are. When we know who we are, there is no one. There's nobody. There is no identity. And in the connecting with that nobody, in the connecting with the beyond the identity, that is freedom, because you're free of all confines of how you're supposed to be, how you want the world to see you, how you want to see, all of that is gone. Freedom from being nobody. And that is the transcendence, because that is absolute cancer, no cancer, $1 million house, no $1 million house, bills, no bills, debt, no debt. There is nothing to suffer for. There's nothing to pursue. There's nothing to fight against. There's nothing to even have willpower for. It's just allowing all that is to be. And again, the misconception in our culture is like, oh, then you'll be homeless and you'll waste into nothing. And literally nothing could be further from the truth, because in allowing yourself to fully be, that it's beyond willpower. You are like literally being carried by the stars in your highest power. And that is so powerfully vibrant and active. Like, I don't know what, it's like the opposite of ending up homeless and things. But again, I know what I'm doing. I'm conflicting you, but it's important for the people who are listening. I don't want anybody listening to think that the identity is the goal. I can don't want, it doesn't matter, but there is farther and deeper to go. But you mentioned connection, and I love the part in your story saying being seen by teammates, being seen by your teammates. To me, I think I just think of that word connection, and I don't know where I was going with that, but I wrote that down for a specific. I wonder if anything comes to mind for you when I say that as it relates to your story.
I'm so glad you brought it up, because, on reflecting, so 11 people in my life knew I actually told that I had cancer, and other friends suspected, right? I mean, people catch on after a while, but most friends are like, well, if he doesn't want to tell me, then I'm not going to ask, right? I respect his privacy. But when I look back at that, it was because I didn't know how to handle and coach other people. I knew that I didn't want to be responsible for their concern, for their response, and so I'd rather not deal with it. But in reflection, and this relates to community, what I denied myself and my friends was an opportunity, one, to depend on them, to share with them, and to explore what I wanted out of that, right? I knew I didn't want to answer every day, how you doing? How's it going, with that sad look. But now I know if it happens again, I'm like, look, I don't want you to act this way. I want you to treat me normally like a human and see who I really am, instead of this, what I'm fighting through. But that was, to me, one of the biggest lessons was a lot of military folks and firefighters, first responders, anybody who is kind of in a service mentality and surrounded by teammates, we never want to show weakness. We never want to take ourselves out of that team. And so what that leads us to is suffering in silence, right? Closing the circle in, not sharing what I'm dealing with. And in retrospect, it denied me and my friends and teammates ability to build stronger community, to build deeper friendships, to lean into what we had instead of pull back from. And I always thought it was the strangest thing in the world that, the SEAL teams produce some of the best teammates in the world. There's nothing these guys wouldn't do for a teammate, except ask another teammate for help. And so that's weird, shocking existence of, I'll do anything for you, but I don't want to ask anything from you or my other teammates, is wrong. And it denies us deeper community.
Well, I got a question. I don't want to, Diego, it looked like you had a thought. But okay, here's a question. You mentioned, you know, you only shared with 11 people, but then people started to suspect. We can't change how other people are going to react to us. What would you say, or did you learn anything in how would it be different Would you have shared more, or would you have stayed the same in order to allow people to know that, hey, you want to be treated like everything, like you're still Rob, but to still have that connection, that open door, the open door, allowing someone to come in and say, hey, I do want to check on you. I want to ask you how you're doing without it being constant. What would you do differently?
Yeah. It's so cancer is an experience for beginners, right? I mean, everyone has cancer. It's usually their first time and hopefully their only time. And so you don't know how to tell people, you don't know what you want or don't want. But now I do know. And so, I'd be like, hey, no, I just want to let you know that I've been diagnosed with cancer. The prognosis is pretty good. And this is what I don't want from you as a friend. I don't want you to make that weird face like you're super sorry for me, but you got a stomach ache. I don't want you to beat around the bush, but I also don't want to answer 100 times a day from every friend, Rob, how you doing? What's going on? Just let's live life as if this isn't me. The cancer isn't me. And let's just treat me like you would normally treat me, except that I may be a little slower. I may lose my hair because of chemotherapy or whatever. But, don't change the way we interact. That's how I would present it now.
Rob, I want to thank you for your take and your testimony on why we fundamentally believe that vulnerability is really the power, and what you were saying before about the team. That's really where it comes from, and it really, really, really is the power. It's so much easier to be like, I got it. It's so much easier to say nothing's wrong than saying, oh, going through the process of saying, I need help is not an easy thing. Yeah. One thing too, kind of reconnecting what you just said about how people interact with you and reconnecting that with the doctor. And this is so hard. I've never had cancer. I've had my own experiences with the idea of, I'm pretty sure I'm about to die right now, but different. The people who love you are also now patients in a way.
Yeah.
Yes, the one with cancer, carrying cancer, is carrying the biggest load. And there could be like this one, listen, man, I want you to just talk to me like a normal human being. But these people don't know what it's like to have somebody diagnosed with cancer. And they're like,
Yeah.
And so everyone, the patient, the friends and family, the doctors, like we're all navigating like this huge, heavy thing. And we're not taught how to navigate things. And in a way, that is their process of, how the hell do I handle the fact that my daddy just, or my son, I'm 80 years old and my 50-year-old son is, you know what I mean? Like, everyone needs grace, man. As we're navigating these bumper cars of life, dude. Because it takes a lot of strength for them to buck up too and be like, okay, I'm going to treat him like he's a normal dude. Like, oh, is that resistance? Yeah. Because now then that's them going down the resistance train of all the things, and it just goes and goes. It has its fingers and everything. It's just going. This is not easy. None of this stuff is easy. I want to bring up this other thing too that just kills me in your story about the Gore-Tex. And the older guys are just wearing, quick dry stuff, and they're letting you wear the Gore-Tex, and they're like, ha, 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 ha. You are drowning to death. You'll learn. And it's for real, dude. It's for real. Like you're like breathing, and another wave comes, and maybe the boat hits you in the head, and it's like, you're in the arena, dude. You are like you're in the gladiator arena, and anything could go wrong and you could die. And the old dudes are like, they'll figure it out. Like, what's your thoughts on that?
No, it's so bizarre, right? And I'm assuming somebody would have swam in and saved me, but there was no indication that was on their mind at all. And no, it was truly scary. I think I logged that as the first time in the teams that I thought, man, I might die right here. And I wasn't the only one, right? There was 4 or 5 of us, and I talked to them afterwards, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that was scary." And it never occurred to us. The last thing we're going to do is shed that brand new equipment and give it up to the surf. We weren't going to lose that, but it was such a learning experience, both on the look. Somebody can tell you that you shouldn't wear this, or they can just let you learn that you shouldn't wear this. And the other lesson is in the story. It's about it's the struggle is so lessened by having people around you and teammates, and even when they're mocking you for your current situation, there's power in that, right? That you're with people and they're seeing you.
It's crazy.
It is crazy. Welcome.
That's the universe too. The universe too. It's like, it could tell you, hey man, we were just talking about it. It could tell you, hey, that's not you're not your identity. You're this. It's like, no, like go for it. They kick you out, either kick you out of the plane. Your parachute either opens or it doesn't. The universe doesn't give a shit, dude, because it's not about that. It's not about how, fluffy life can be. It's just like, is this person learning or are they not learning? And that's the only agenda.
Yes.
I was talking to a buddy of mine, old SF guy, and I was telling him about how excited I was about jumping on this podcast with Diego and you, and both y'all are SEALs. And both of us said the same thing. The water training y'all do just in training is terrifying. When you tell the story of wearing the Gore-Tex and it pulling you down, puts knots in my stomach. If I could never be deep in water, like I don't mind the water, but I'm the kind of person, if I'm in a pool, don't touch me. Like, much less don't try to drown me and tell me I'm in a school that I'm learning something. But Rob, I want to say that it was such an honor to meet you at Warriorside, to hear your story, to just know you as a person, because you are absolutely incredible. You have an amazing story. You have an incredible presence. You tell your story so well. I'm truly honored to know you, and it's. I know Diego can attest to this. It's an honor. I'm so grateful that you came on this podcast and shared more of your story with us, because it means so much. What else do you have going on now in your life that we could benefit to know what you're doing?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And, every time I get with you guys, I learn so much too. So right back at you. So as Diego said, I'm the Chief Community Officer at Soteria Precision Medicine Foundation. It's a nonprofit, and the mission is precision medicine for all. There have been so many amazing advances in cancer care because of genomics, genetic testing, individualized medicine tailored to your specific genetic makeup of you, your body, and your cancer, that Soteria was created to help provide that for everyone. I linked up with them, and we have this initiative that we call the Cancer Hunt. People used to catch cancer, right? Cancer used to catch them. And we are at the point now that we can hunt it. We can find it early. We can fix it and finish it before it advances to a terminal stage. And so what we're doing with the military is we're starting with cancer in special operations, because they are a small community that can be activated, because they likely have higher exposure rates. They, millions of bullets fired in a career, tons of explosives, lack of sleep, everything that that the normal military person has is just increased in exposure levels for SAW. But we're seeing cancers in both the military and special operations that are incredibly concerning. So we've started the Cancer Hunt Initiative to identify those military people and special operators fighting cancer, to get them the latest genomic testing, nurse case navigation to assess their treatment plans, and then clinical trial research to identify the best treatments possible for them. We've also partnered with an organization, another nonprofit called TGen, Translational Genomic Research Institute. They're going to take all this genetic testing that we're doing for clinical services to the patient. They're going to conduct genomic research on it to try to understand why this is happening. And, every cancer is different. There's not one type of lung cancer, there's 70. And then when you look at different types of exposures, those cancers may be unique among themselves. And so we're trying to figure out what's going on and how to mitigate it while we save lives and develop a soup to nuts pathway for cancer treatment in the 21st century. And we're going to deliver that to the people who bore the battle first, special operators and broader military. We say it's a cancer and special operations, but any military person that contacts Soteria and says they have cancer, how can I get help, is going to get help from us. And so we're starting small with 100 patients. We're going to grow to 1,000, 5,000. Hopefully, by the time we have 5,000, we're going to have tons of research insight. We're going to save a lot of lives, and we will be able to shame the government into doing what they need to do, is care for those who bore the battle. So that's what I'm doing, and I love doing it because it's giving back to the military and the community, and it's also really building unique cutting-edge capability by combining amazing technology and amazing human touch.
Now, how can a veteran or family member of a veteran that has cancer, whatever, what can they do? How can they find y'all?
Yeah, I'm sure you guys will drop a link in the podcast, but just go to Soteria Precision Medicine Foundation, and there you will see a link for patients, and we have an intake form for patients to get directly linked up with a nurse case manager. In the last several months, we've had 25 military cancer fighters knock on the door. We've referred a few to the Tug McGraw Foundation. We've seen 6 in the last 7 months. We've seen 6 cases of brain cancer, glioblastoma, incredibly rare. So we're seeing lots of different cancers that are rare, that need immediate attention. And so we're standing by for anybody to reach out at our website. You can also reach me at rob@soteria1.com, and I'll get you the right place.
Love it. Love it. Thank you, Rob, for coming on, for sharing your story. Diego, for allowing this all to be possible. And if you're listening to this, if you're watching this, this is going to continue, but it can only continue with sponsorship, with your help. And if you're a veteran, reach out, warriorside.org. This is where you can go if you want to sponsor, if you want to be part of the program, because look, just like you heard in Rob's story, this isn't just about storytelling. This isn't just about sharing. This is healing. And we've all experienced it, those who have gone through Warriorside, and we want more men and women to experience that. So if you're listening and you're capable of sponsoring, do it. And if you're a veteran and you want to be part of it, reach out. We want you with us. So to everyone, thank you. Diego, Rob, y'all are incredible. I am truly honored to know both of you.
Thank you, guys. It's great being with you.
Veterans and first responders.
And, oh,
Thank you both.
I'm sorry.
So
Yes, first
great.
responders as well.
Yeah, that's okay.
That's
Thank you both. This is huge, and we're very grateful. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to follow on Instagram at The Warriorside.